Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode. We're going to dive into something that touches all of us at some point, our emotional wounds and the incredible ways our minds protect us from them. You see, as humans, we're extraordinarily vulnerable creatures, painfully so, especially when we're young. In those early years, we're at the mercy of the people around us, and when there's a shortfall of tenderness, care, or love, it can leave a mark. That damage might come from a parent going missing, someone passing away, or maybe just being misunderstood or treated harshly. Whatever the cause, these experiences create wounds in us, psychological scars that don't just disappear. But here's where it gets fascinating. We're not helpless. Our minds are brilliantly ingenious. And in response to these wounds, we develop what psychologists call defense mechanisms. These are clever strategies to shield us from further pain, to help us keep going, and sometimes even to save our lives. For example, if a parent was absent, we might learn not to feel sad when someone leaves. It's a way to protect ourselves. Or if we grew up with an unreliable caregiver, like an alcoholic, we might become fiercely independent, relying only on ourselves to avoid disappointment. These defenses are lifesavers when we're young, but there's a catch. As time goes on, they start to cost us. What once kept us safe becomes outdated, like an old tool we don't need anymore. They turn into behaviors that limit us, like shallow relationships or a deep loneliness, and we might not even realize it's happening. Today, we're going to explore how to heal from these wounds by understanding ourselves better. It's a 7-step journey of self-awareness, and I'm excited to walk through it with you. Let's start with the first step. Identifying our symptoms. These are the signs in our lives that something's off. Maybe you've noticed you're not great at love. You keep people at arm's length, or your relationships feel brittle. Or perhaps you're lonely, even when you're surrounded by people. Some of us don't even notice the patterns, like being manically cheerful all the time or underperforming at work despite having so much potential. These are symptoms, little clues that point to deeper emotional wounds. Think about your own life for a second. What feels harder than it should? What habits or stuck spots keep tripping you up? Maybe you're always worried, or you can't seem to enjoy success. These aren't just quirks. They're signals worth paying attention to. Next, we move to the second step, identifying our defense mechanisms. This can be tricky because these defenses hide in plain sight. They feel so normal to us. But once you start looking, you might recognize them. Here are some common ones. Falling in love with people who can't commit, sabotaging relationships so they never last, underperforming at work even though you're capable of more, or being so independent you never ask for help. Others might numb themselves with alcohol, work, exercise, anything to avoid feeling too much. Does any of that ring a bell? Maybe you've caught yourself pushing people away when they get close, or procrastinating on something big. These aren't random. They're your mind's way of protecting you from old wounds. Now, on to the third step, recognizing the cleverness of these defense mechanisms. We often think of them as problems, like they're just flaws to fix. But that's not the whole picture. These strategies were brilliant solutions at one point. They had a logic to them, a purpose. So, before we try to ditch them, let's give them some credit. Take falling in love with unavailable people. It seems self-defeating, right? But the clever upside is that you don't risk being let down. Your heart stays safe. Or ensuring your relationships fail. It's a way to avoid the pain of loss. Underperforming at work. Maybe it keeps you from standing out and stirring up envy. Being fiercely independent. No one can disappoint you if you don't need them. Whatever your defense mechanism is, ask yourself, how is this smart? How to help me survive? That brings us to the fourth step. Reconstructing why the defense mechanism was necessary. This is where we dig into the past, like detectives piecing together a story. What wound made this defense make sense? It might feel like ancient history, but the clues are in how we act now. For example, if you keep falling for unavailable people, maybe it's because someone important, like a mom, wasn't there when you needed them. If you sabotage relationships, perhaps a parent was unpredictable, and you learn to brace for loss. Or if you hold back at work, maybe an older sibling was jealous and made you feel safer staying small. Look at your own defense mechanism. What might have happened to make it necessary? You don't need all the answers right now, but starting to connect the dots is powerful. Here's where it gets a little unexpected. Step 5. Congratulating ourselves for being clever. I know it sounds odd. We're so used to beating ourselves up over these patterns, but hear me out. Your defense mechanism isn't some silly mistake. It's proof of how smart you were. When life got tough, your mind found a way to carry you through. Maybe you couldn't feel sad because feeling it would have broken you. Maybe you became independent because depending on others wasn't an option. Take a moment to feel proud of that. Say to yourself, hey, younger me, you did an amazing job keeping me safe. That compassion for yourself, it's a game changer. Now, step 6, realizing the defense mechanism is outdated. You've given it credit, you've understood its roots, and now it's time to see that it's past its prime. What worked back then doesn't fit anymore. The world's different, you're different, and these old defenses are holding you back. If you avoid closeness to protect yourself, you might be missing out on real connection. If you're so independent you never lean on anyone, you could be isolating yourself. It's like carrying around a heavy shield when the battle's long over. You don't need it anymore, and keeping it is costing you more than it's worth. Finally, step 7, deciding to say goodbye to the defense mechanism. This isn't a quick fix, it's a gentle process. You're telling yourself, I'm safe now. I don't need this old trick anymore. If you've been numb, maybe you start letting yourself feel again, little by little. If you've been fiercely independent, try asking for help once in a while. It's about stepping into a new way of living, one that's freer and more real. Let me give you an example to tie it all together. Imagine someone who always underperforms at work. Their defense mechanism keeps them from shining too bright. The clever upside? They avoid envy or conflict, maybe from a jealous sibling who made life hard when they stood out. But the price now is they're unfulfilled, stuck below their potential. By understanding this, they can see that the sibling's not a threat anymore. They can start taking risks, chasing goals, and letting their talents breathe. So, here's the journey in a nutshell. We identify our symptoms, spot our defense mechanisms, admire their cleverness, uncover the wounds they came from, congratulate ourselves, realize they're outdated, and let them go. It's not always easy, but it's how we heal. The more we understand ourselves, the healthier and freer we become. You deserve that freedom, a life not weighed down by old wounds, but lifted by hope and possibility. Thanks for joining me today. Take care, and I'll see you next time.